Guys, I was looking to re-watch one of Fred Kassi's fights before Fred Kassi versus Hughie Fury this weekend. Now, before I got to making my decision on which fight to pick, I remembered that Fred Kassi had fought Dominic Breazeale, and I thought, given yesterday's announcement that Anthony Joshua would be fighting Breazeale, I thought I'd re-watch Fred Kassi versus Dominic Breazeale. I thought I'd kill two birds with one stone. Number one, it would give me some ammunition. I did see the fight initially, but I thought it would give me some ammunition and something fresh in my memory when we were doubtlessly discussing Breazeale in the build-up to the Anthony Joshua fight. And then number two, I thought it would give me an insight into Fred Kassi. And it's an interesting fight. It's a fight that's quite hard to score. A lot of people think that Fred Kassi was hard done by. Essentially, Dominic Breazeale was, and I think if you haven't seen Dominic Breazeale before, this would be a good fight to watch, because not only would it give you an insight into Hughie Fury this weekend, but it will also help you prepare for what to expect when Dominic Breazeale fights Joshua. Because Breazeale was walking around the ring, throwing a very slow, very lazy jab, and Fred Kassi, being a lot smaller, was able to duck under his jab, close the distance, and come in and try and land big bombs on him. Now, interestingly, Hughie Fury is going to have a similar height advantage over Fred Kassi as Dominic Breazeale. Hughie Fury isn't quite as big as Breazeale, but Cassie's a small guy. So, the way Hughie Fury fights, you're going to presume that Hughie's going to try and box him from the outside, and Cassie's going to look to get on the inside and then rush Hughie Fury. But I don't think Fred Kassi is going to be able to give Hughie Fury as many problems as he did give Dominic Breazeale. Firstly, let's talk about the problems that Fred Kassi can cause. For a start, he's good at bending and he's got good head movement. He leans very well. I think it's a good thing in a fighter who can lean at the waist. So, if a fighter is coming towards them and throwing shots, they don't have to break their defensive construct. They don't even have to move if they're up against the ropes. They can simply turn and go back, or they can duck under the ropes. And Fred Kassi has that. He's got the ability to bend at the waist, to lean back. He's got the ability to switch. You'll see him switching from orthodox to southpaw very, very regularly in the fight. And he's a guy who rolls punches well, underrated head movement, underrated angles, and he can make you swing and miss, basically. That's what Fred Kassi brings to the table, and those elements could certainly be a problem for Hughie Fury. Having said that, Hughie Fury has already fought the likes of Dominic Gwynn, the likes of George Arias, these very experienced journeyman types who have good defensive skills and who make the habit of going late in fights and making prospects look bad. So I think Hughie Fury's fought similar opposition to this before. Admittedly, Cassie is probably a step up from George Arias and Dominic Gwynn at this stage, but I think Hughie's fought guys like this who can be awkward. Now, in terms of Fred Kassi causing Hughie any problems, in terms of Fred Kassi's offence, that's what I see as unlikely, because where Kassi was so effective against Dominic Breazeale is that he could duck under his jab and close the gap. And I think there were two factors that were weaknesses of Breazeale, which were a slow jab, which he refused to double up, and poor footwork. Now, Hughie Fury has a very fast, very accurate jab. His jab is much snappier than Breazeale's. It's much faster, it's much harder, it's much more accurate. I think Fred Kassi is going to find it a lot harder to duck under the jab. Secondly, the key thing to do when you've got a fighter you're up against who's changing the angles and he's trying to rush under your jab and trying to bob and weave is to double up the jab. It's absolutely key, because it's very much easier to slip one jab, to use head movement to escape from one jab. It's quite hard once you've already slipped a jab to then slip the second jab when the double jab is on its way. I'd also like to see Hughie, and Hughie's got one of the best jabs in the heavyweight division, so I expect him to see this. But what we're going to see here is the full use of the jab, not just a straight jab to the face, not just a double jab to the face. We're going to see him jabbing to the chest, jab to the face, jab to the body. He's really going to make it difficult for Fred Kassi to slip the punches. And once you slip that jab, it's very hard to then rush in and get inside the pocket when the second jab is coming. And for me, that's going to be a key differentiator as to why Hughie Fury is going to cause Dominic Breazeale, it's going to cause Fred Kassi a lot more problems than Dominic Breazeale was able to. because Brazil's jab was so much slower and weaker and more predictable. You know, it's a pouring, lazy jab. Moving aside from that, if Fred Kassi is able to slip the jab, which I suspect he won't be able to with Hughie's jab, if he is able to slip the jab, Fred Kassi will then try and move into range. Now, if you watch Dominic Breazeale's fight, his feet and his stance are very wide. You know, it means he's not able to make swift adjustments. He's not able to quickly, change the angle and quickly take a step back because his stance is too wide. He's not very light on his feet. He's quite flat-footed. He's quite heavy set in that sense. Hughie Fury has some fast feet. He's got some really underrated footwork. So I suspect that a smaller guy like Fred Kassi, even if he does have some success slipping the Hughie Fury jab, which I think he'll struggle with, by the time he manages to get into range, Hughie Fury will be a moving target. And he's not going to be there to pin like Fred Kassi was able to do with Dominic Breazeale. So I think that whilst Fred Kassi, changing stances and ducking low and, all of that good stuff may make Hughie less effective, I don't see Fred Kassi having the chance of taking rounds off Hughie Fury in the same fashion he was able to do against Dominic Breazeale. Because I think that fight was more about Breazeale's weaknesses than it was about Fred Kassi's strengths. What Hughie Fury needs to do in a fight like this is look at the performance Tyson Fury put in against Derek Chisora. I mean, that kind of performance, that sort of mould, is exactly what you want to do against a shorter fighter who tries to duck in low, get under your jab, and then come on the inside. And I think Hughie Fury will beat Fred Kassi. I think he'll beat him 10 rounds to 0, 9 rounds to 1, 8 rounds to 2. I think he'll beat him in good fashion, actually. I think whilst Fred Kassi may be a step up, I don't think Fred Kassi has the offensive capability to give troubles to a fighter of Hughie's talent. And if I'm correct, that will say something, because a lot of people think Fred Kassi beat Dominic Breazeale. So, with Dominic Breazeale fighting for a world title next fight out, it will perhaps tell you something about the level of opponent that Anthony Joshua will be stepping in with. I expect Hughie Fury, I know Fred Kassi's got punch resistance, but I wouldn't be surprised here if Hughie Fury has success to Fred Kassi's body. So one thing I've noticed about Fred Kassi is because he's, I guess, that opponent type nowadays, he's developed this sort of very tight high guard, because I guess a lot of prospects go with the lead 1-2, jab cross, especially because he's shorter than most of the guys he's going to be up against. So I guess a lot of guys try and fight behind a sort of straight 1-2, and as a result, sometimes Fred Kassi goes to the very, very, very high guard, and that can mean that his body is left exposed. And for a guy like Hughie Fury, with his hand speed and body punching, I think Hughie may be able to find a gap between his elbow and his waist and start sinking in some really, really decent body punches. And I also think Hughie Fury is probably a bigger puncher than Dominic Breazeale. And I don't rate Hughie Fury as a puncher either. I just don't think Dominic Breazeale is as big a puncher as his KO ratio suggests. So I think, I don't. On balance, I'll go with Hughie points, as my prediction. But I don't think the stoppage is totally out of the question. I think, Fred Kassi's awkward, as I say, lots of head movement, giving lots of angles. And I think, as a result, Hughie Fury's best bet is to go to the body. One, because the head will be moving and it's much harder to move the body. Two, because I keep using Dominic Breazeale now, because Fred Kassi's hands will be so high and so tight. Now, in my particular opinion, a win over here for Hughie Fury is a step in the right direction. As I said when the fight was made, it isn't really the choice of opponent that I'd necessarily want to bring to the party. Cassie's tough, he's awkward, he doesn't make good fights, but fundamentally the guy is offensively limited, and I don't expect him to have the offensive arsenal to cause Hughie Fury problems. I think I'm not saying there's any need to rush Hughie, because I think he's 21 years old, he's an absolute baby in the heavyweight division, but potentially it's time after this fight to look at a Dimitrenko, or to look at I don't know, I'd have to have a bit more of a think about other opponents, but yeah, maybe a Dimitrenko, maybe a Ustinov, maybe sort of that level of opponent, maybe a Pianetta, someone who's a slight step up from Fred Kassi. For me, simple, Hughie Fury to win on points. I think Hughie's jab is going to be seen to good effect. I think if you watch out for Hughie's jab changing levels, if you watch out for Hughie's double jab, those are going to keep Fred Kassi on the outside. I think Fred Kassi will resort to lunging in and be picked off from range by Hughie, and then expect to see him start sinking in those body punches. For me, really looking for a big performance from Hughie Fury here. I'll be very impressive if he gets the stop edge, but good chance to throw his name into the mix. A win over Fred Kassi will doubtlessly lead to comparisons between Hughie and Brazil, and we know who Brazil's fighting next. Let me know your thoughts. If you've enjoyed this video, please click the thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, please do subscribe so you can catch my post-fight analysis after this. Many thanks for watching.